What is going on, everyone? Matt McCarthy here for GR Weekly on a Thursday. I was a little bit sick last night. Still not feeling particularly amazing, but I'm feeling a little better to be able to stream. Especially my throat, my voice was not, as buttery smooth as I normally like it to be. So back here to break down some Week 9 games and some really crazy Tuesday news. Tuesday and Wednesday, whatever day it was. Really just insane stuff. There's a few games right now that are definitely in big jeopardy of being completely changed from what even the spread lines I have are right now. Looking at you, Green Bay, Kansas City, looking at you, New York Giants. But with that, let's get right into it. Rankings are going to be they are fully updated as well over on fantasypros.com. You can find the link through my Twitter at the bottom of the screen at Methodical1. Make sure to also follow Gridiron Ratings over on Twitter to get in touch with all the stuff that's going on with the Gridiron Ratings channel. So starting off, New York Jets versus the Indianapolis Colts, 10.5 point dogs here are the New York Jets on Thursday Night Football, 45.5 point total. Jets, okay, cool what Mike White did, his jersey, and the game balls over in the NFL Hall of Fame. Great stuff there. Hard to trust anything outside of this game, though. Outside of Michael Carter, going to come in as a mid RB2 option. When I do a fresh ranking sheet, they had him as like a near RB1. I would not push the envelope too much. A big portion of what this offense was for the season came in the last game. It was like 30% of the team's yards and 25% of the team's points came in the Week 8 game versus Cincinnati. So I don't want to say that too much of what the New York Jets is now completely changed because of one game. If we're doing that, Travis Kelce is no longer a tight end one sort of situation, right? Don't want to put too much on a one-game sample, but for Michael Carter, increased snap workload pretty much throughout the whole season, when near 75% in the last 2 weeks alone, 49 touches in those two games as well. While the Jets, as you know, most are sits over the place, Jamison Crowder, if Corey Davis missed, I think this does get pushed up my rankings a little bit. I think I would be ranking Tyler Kroft as well as a tight end. There's better tight end options out there, but we're looking for something on Thursday Night Football. This is a 10-point spread. I'm not too comfortable in saying go out, start your Jets. Elijah Moore would be pushed up as well. It's Crowder as a flex option at best, and really Michael Carter. And again, I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, because again, only 2 games with 2 50-point totals. I don't want to be recommending too many players in these kind of dud games, especially here on a Thursday Night Football game for Week 9. On to the Indianapolis side, pretty easy. Taylor and Pittman, great starts. Pittman, though, I do think is an easy spot to come in as overranked after that 2 touchdown game performance in Week 8. So just on the other side, don't want to get too ahead of myself for Michael Carter. Kind of same thing over here with Pittman. Don't want to be getting too above the belt in terms of what he is. He's a wide receiver 2, a strong wide receiver 2, but he's being, mixed in terms of ranks of where I have Thursday, a mid Thursday night appearance, right? What day is it? I was sick most of yesterday, so middle of the Thursday sort of stream. I don't have as much schoolwork today. Usually Thursdays and part of the weekend are really my schoolwork days. We'd had midterms for the last 2 weeks, so I'm kind of all caught up with random sort of stuff. I just got out of the shower. I just realized my hair is a mess, so it's kind of been a weird sort of thing. But yeah, thank you for for stopping in the morning. I don't know what time it is where you are, but it's 12:30 on the East Coast for me. With that, if I'm drinking water more often in this show as well, again, my throat was a little not great. I was pretty lethargic and not feeling well yesterday, so that's why we're doing this Thursday stream. Want to make sure I made up for it. It's been a busy few weeks for me. But back to this Indianapolis side, Jonathan Taylor is going to be competing as the overrun running back overall for this week and possibly the rest of the season. There's some guys up there. Kamara is still my top running back for the week. I really like that Atlanta matchup. We'll talk a little bit more about what his point totals were with Taysom Hill at quarterback, who should be the presumed quarterback coming into this week for the New Orleans Saints after the injury to Jameis Winston. But for Indianapolis, I really like Pittman. I really like Jonathan Taylor. The rest of them, if you're going to be looking at Carson Wentz just as a high QB2, not a QB1 option for me in this week, that's really all I'm looking for. Zach Pascal, Malik Cox, these guys all mix in, but they're not anyone that I'm saying are recommended starts. We only have 4 teams on bye. should not be looking that far down the list. Can these guys score? Of course, but as always, there's so many guys to look at. If you want to bring up 50 different receivers, we can do so. But I don't really want to spend too much time on the lesser guys. Especially, I wanted to make this a kind of a shorter stream. So, Atlanta versus New Orleans Saints. New Orleans favored by 6, 42-point spread. 42-point over under. So you can see my head's in a fog for sure. Atlanta, think it's in the bad spot versus New Orleans Saints. Struggled versus Carolina, not loving what they did last week, not loving what they're going to be looking at here for New Orleans Saints. But we do have a question. If Zach Wilson is healthy, do you want the Jets to start White or Wilson? I'll say this. Was Mike White really fun to have 400 yards passing last week? Of course. I'd like to think the New York Jets would like to start their, second or third overall pick, Zach Wilson, instead of Mike White, if they have the option to do so. Wilson has not been good, and Mike White was good in a game where we all expect him to be, just awful, and no one really anticipated that. If I thought Mike White should start rest of the season, I'd be more inclined to think he would be a good start here on Thursday night against the Indianapolis Colts, who are a fine defense, not anything special in terms of what they've been playing to this regard for 2021. But I think Wilson should be their guy. It was fun to see what Mike White did, but I'm still leaning Wilson. It's way, 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 way too quick to say that Wilson is bad or, should not be the starter for them. Just like guys like Tua and guys like Jalen Hurts, when you have just a small sample size of starts, any of the rookie quarterbacks this year, outside of basically Lawrence, have really not been really good fantasy contributors, but it's really just kind of a different sort of story. Perhaps Wilson learns more from the sidelines since he didn't have a mentor yet in his NFL career. Has Mike White have a mentor so far? I mean, this is his third season. This is the first time we've talked about this guy. They're in a tough spot. I'll say this. I can't remember the top of his name off the top of my head, but the offensive passing game coordinator for the Jets passing away, unfortunately, in the preseason. It did them no favors. This is a bad team. The veterans have not really worked out. When they brought in Tevin Coleman, they brought in Corey Davis, Keenan Cole, all these sort of guys. The idea was 2021 was just about developing Wilson and Carter and Moore and seeing what they got out of guys like Mims still. Their focus is not 2021. The Jets' focus is 2022 and onward. They knew going into this year they were going to be in a bad spot. They have 2 wins. They beat Tennessee and they beat Cincinnati. Those were 2 teams the last 2 weeks that were ranked as the number 1 seed in the AFC. There is a good plan from this coaching staff as an overall, sort of outlook for the Jets. The problem is right now they just don't really have the talent altogether and the veteran nature to be able to pull this off. 2022 is when I really want to start looking at under the Jets with a really tougher microscope. I kind of give them a pass this year. There's other teams I'm looking at with more scrutiny because I don't like the coaching. Like the Jaguars is a different story because I think Saleh and this coaching staff, at least I think, has a good head on their shoulders. With Urban Meyer and Lawrence, I'm not giving them the same sort of pass because one, I think they have more developed talent on the offensive side of the ball. But 2, I don't think the coaching staff is designed to be there long term with all the things taken into account. But Saleh and the Jets, I think, is more focused that, hey, we're going to be bad in 2021. We know this. Let's see what we can do in 2022 in the future. Before this Falcon side, Pitts was prioritized by Carolina. New Orleans, I'd have to say, really would like to try and shut them down as well. He's outside my top 5. There's better matchups at tight end. Dalton Schultz. I didn't really move him up with Blake Jarwin, but Dalton Schultz, Mike Gesicki. These are guys that are going to be Dallas Goedert. These are guys in my top 5, along with, the normal, Andrews and Waller and Kelsey sort of group. So looking for those guys to be safer sort of options if you're choosing between these two. But Pitts, he's still good. He's still in a good spot. But if I'm looking at what just happened with Carolina, and I think in a possibly better defense in the New Orleans Saints should be trying to do the exact same sort of idea, which is limit Pitts with no Ridley out there. Patterson is still going to be a great option because he plays running back. And again, I actually play in a league where there's a big debate because he is a running back. I agree. He is a running back. He's also listed as just wide receiver in some spots. So on the CBS league I'm in, he's just receiver. He's a better running back in my ranks than he is receiver based upon the positions. 10 fantasy points at running back means a whole lot of a different story than at receiver. So I'm looking for this to be really just a position priority. And for the rest of the funky bunch, Sharp is operated as the natural replacement for Lee in terms of what they're doing for their offensive schemes, ranking him in a head of Gage, wide receiver 4 or 5 of the best for really either of them. Gage definitely lower. We do have a question. Daniel says, should I start Boston Scott or Josh Jacobs? I like the NFL season that we're coming to a spot where we're asking about Josh Jacobs or Boston Scott. I am leaning Josh Jacobs. Boston Scott is inside my top 24 as well. The LA Chargers are one of the better spots for a running back in the NFL, but I think this Josh Jacobs matchup against the New York Giants is a good sort of spot for Josh Jacobs to really sort of bounce back to, I think it's two things, right? One, because of the bye, we don't see Josh Jacobs for a week, right? Whenever you have a player on bye, it always feels like whatever you thought of him, if he's not an elite player, he's now worse because you haven't seen him for a full cycle. So now if Jacobs was not particularly producing well due to injuries and due to performance going into the bye, so now coming out of it, he's no longer a safe RB2. Now he's in consideration with other guys. I'd like to not trust our Eagles running back if I can. Can Boston Scott score 2 touchdowns again? Of course. Can Jalen Hurts score more than 11 fantasy points, though? Of course. That was a very bad game against the Eagles. Against the Lions for most of that fantasy sort of situation. I would rather trust Josh Jacobs. If he doesn't score more points than Boston Scott, that's unfortunate. But I like to at least think the process going into it should lean Jacobs in this. Scott, low RB2 flex play for me, really. And buy or sell, Atlanta scoring 14.5 points versus the Saints this week. The half is where 14 is a low total, right? The 10 that they scored last week, you'd like to think that a team going in, I think 20 points, right? 20 points for me in the NFL, I think, is a benchmark for what an NFL team should be scoring on a weekly basis. You should be at least getting to 20 something points around that sort of. And is Damon Harris a good flex? The next question. Damon Harris, I have actually ranked over both the running backs you asked before, Daniel. So I would actually lean Harris, then Jacobs, then Boston Scott. Harris for me, again, if you want to think about how this Carolina game at least is going to operate, I think this is a low scoring game. And in spots where it's tight, Damon Harris has been very productive. I like Harris the most of those three. It would be Harris right outside my top 12. I got guys like Elijah Mitchell and Cordell Patterson at running back ranked ahead of him. But I have him over Jacobs, who's running back 17 in full PPR. Again, you use it for half PPR purpose as well. I do the same rankings for both. And then Zach Moss around 23. I lean higher than 14.5. I think they can get to 17, 20 or so. Is it a shoe-in to do so? No, but it's hard for an NFL team to be limited to less than 2 touchdowns. I think that's actually a very impressive thing to do in the NFL these days with a 42 point, because what's the implied total here? So you split that in half, 27, 17, 6, 15 sort of deal. I don't know. My brain's not working right now at all. I'm super fuzzy, but I'd like to think they could score over 14.5. Don't ask me to do math right now. It's not going to work. It's not going to work out well. You just saw me try to do that as I get a phone call from my dad. And you know what? Let's answer the phone. Let's see what he wants. Let's see what he wants right now. It's a weird show today, so we're going to see how's it going. Hey, what's up, Dad? Hey, I'm live on the show. How can I help you? All right, bye. You didn't want to talk. That's fine. But over to this New Orleans side, right? I think we spent enough time on the Atlanta Falcons. New Orleans. Taysom Hill with the concussion. Looks like he should be good to go. When I was talking about Taysom Hill yesterday on Twitter, there are, to me, I think firm 9 quarterbacks I believe I'd rather have rest of the season. So you're talking about guys like, easy at the top. You got Brady and Allen, Jackson, Mahomes still, right? But I'm looking down the list, guys like Hurts, guys like Herbert. There's enough quarterbacks, I think, where he's not a locked-in sort of like top 5 sort of option, because the very easy comparison for Taysom Hill is Jalen Hurts, right? Now, the late game sort of, fantasy push that he does is a different story, but I'm looking at the rushing production and the overall sort of makeup of what Taysom Hill can be to Hurts. Because I don't think Taysom Hill's making those 50-yard passes, just like we've seen Hurts do. Hurts is pretty much doing, under underthrowing sort of deep balls like week to week, it seems. Every time I watch the Eagles, I'm seeing him unable to complete those downfield passes. So, Matt, can you name one frequently asked question from your dad, usually about football? What's his favorite current NFL player? His favorite team is the Jets. I'll tell you that. His favorite player is not really, that's a hard one to kind of nail down. He keeps trying to add, I like that. I think he has a Elijah Moore jersey, but that's just because he wants to not have Wilson, because the Jets don't have a lot going for them right now. So he'll probably, I think maybe he'll just go with I say, which is Matt Ryan. I'm a Falcons fan, so he would go with them. But don't tell anyone. I like to keep my teams a secret, so maybe he'd say Matt Ryan. So keep with this New Orleans side. Top 10 sort of play for me this week. Hill, though, we have to look at what he does without Thomas this year, though. So we're in 2020, the 4 games he started with Michael Thomas, though, in there, which is weeks 11 to 14. He played the Atlanta Falcons twice that year as well. 28.6 in week 11, 20.3, 27.9, and 25.9 were the fantasy point totals for Taysom Hill as a starter in 2020 for the New Orleans Saints. Now, no Michael Thomas. Does have Alvin Kamara, though. Alvin Kamara with Taysom Hill last year, 14.2 full points per game on average with Hill as his quarterback, which is well under his average that he did have, which is 25.2 for the 2022 season, and is under his 19.7 current total as well. Do you have a question here from Lee? What can I get if I trade Deontay and Barkley? Are you trading them together or are you trading them separately? Because Barkley is a tough spot, right? So I've Barkley in a lot of leagues, and I've been sitting on him for the entire season. Barkley is just about to come back. If you can package these two for, let's look at running back, right? So if you can package Deontay Johnson and Barkley for Daryl Henderson, which is a weird statement to make, Nick Chubb, Najee Harris, I think you can get Harris, Aaron Jones, Mixon, if you can move up to a better running back, right? A running back who is playing, that's excellent. Because even though Deontay Johnson's very good, receiver just has a larger pool to work from of startable guys. Running back, once I get past really this week, Damon Harris at 13, we start and Daryl Williams, James Robinson, Chase Edmonds. This is like 14, 15, 16. I start getting worrisome about the weekly sort of output for running back this week. And that's just, we're just looking at week 9, right? But if you can take those guys and package them to a running back who is A, starting, and B, is going to give you enough production, because you're looking to really upgrade at running back, I would think. Because receiver, it's a different spot. Receiver, if you're looking to a guy like, Keenan Allen or something like that, that'd be great. But I like to think that you're trying to look up for running back, because running back is really tough. But if you're going to hold on to Barkley this long, don't trade down. I'd like to say if you're going to get anything out of him, make sure you're getting, a better player out of it. Don't go down with Barkley. It's very much not something I would recommend. It's not something I'm personally even doing. I'd like to get a better player if I'm moving a running back, because once Barkley comes back, if the ankle is all cleared, that's fine for me. I don't think if he wasn't even in this COVID situation, he'd be playing in week 9, but let's see what he does in week 9, week 10, and all that. That's for me, a better spot to go with. And who's a good flex to trade for? Now, that's a very loaded question, because you're looking at like a real flex player. I think Rashad Bateman. I really like what I've seen out of Bateman in just a short amount of time. Coming out of this bye, he's fully locked and loaded to go. I think in this Minnesota matchup, still playing behind Brown. I'd still rank Brown ahead of him. But if we're looking at flex guys, Bateman for some reason is ranked, I think, way, way too low this week. Around like wide receiver, like 43 on average in half PPR. Bateman, this offense, I think, is being unlocked more through the passing game. So Jackson now has Andrews, Brown, and Bateman to work with. I think if you're looking at a flex player, just purely flex, I think Rashad Bateman has the best opportunity to go from being a flex to a wide receiver 2 very, very quickly. I almost have him ranked as such this week. And again, that's my personal sort of, inclination to really rank that guy a little bit higher. But I think it's a good spot. And speaking of Matt Ryan, do you know why Ryan struggled so bad last night at home? Really mattered that much. He didn't target wide receiver that much. Zacchaeus nor Gage. Why? When you was talking about this on the Monday show. I'm not particularly sure when Ridley announced to his team when he was not going to be playing this week, and who knows when he's going to return in that regard as well. But again, mental health more important than the football game. What he's doing right now, I'm totally fine with in that regard. But to that matter, I don't know if their game plan was set for not having Ridley be accounted for it. And the Carolina Panthers took away the second best receiving option, because whatever you think of Patterson, his scoring has been very great for fantasy. But when I still think of the hierarchy of fans of NFL players, Ridley, Pitts, and then Patterson would be that sort of listing for these receiving options. I just think they weren't really prepared to play Carolina. Carolina had a good defensive measure to take away their primary option, and the reads were just not great. It's a bad game. They're playing, unfortunately, a tough opponent here in New Orleans Saints in week 9. So I thought Ryan was a good spot last week. He got downgraded without Ridley, but it's going to be, I think, another tough spot for them. Tajay Sharp has operated as the direct backup to Calvin Ridley. So if you're looking as their next receiving option, it would then be Sharp out wide instead of Zacchaeus and Gage. Gage has really not played much into their plans this year, unfortunately. Which really stinks, because I actually liked Gage a lot going into the year, but it is what it is. But Kamara, top option for me at running back. Callaway just fine, unfortunately. Do need to see what this offense as a whole does with Taysom Hill in the quarterback, because you don't have Michael Thomas, and that was such a key piece of what the Saints were able to do with Hill last year. Because no matter what you do think of these guys, do think that this is sort of spot where I think Thomas was going to be a big point of focus for what this team could do for the rest of the season. They're 5-2, which is excellent. So if just kind of keeping it up, but Kamara for PPR purposes is going to be one of the top options now going forward. No Derrick Henry on the rest of the season. And one more question. I like all these questions today, guys. I got to say that. Maybe I should stream more in the afternoon. Do I trust in Stephon Diggs or trade him? Now, Stephon Diggs, if you are not happy with production so far this year, I understand that. He only has 1-2 touchdowns on the year. He had three scores on the total season. I like this schedule, though. That's the problem. And the Buffalo Bills are going to – the nice thing about being Diggs is you don't have to play against Buffalo. If there's a defense in the NFL right now I really would not like to play players against, it's Buffalo. But looking through, he's seen 7 targets in all but one game. The yards have not been great. He only has 2 games over 75 yards. But you have Jacksonville, the Jets, Colts, Saints, which is a little bit tougher, New England, which is not super great, Tampa Bay, which is good, Carolina is good, New England and Atlanta. So you got Atlanta in the championship too, which is, go if you make it that far. But Carolina, New England, Atlanta is your fantasy playoffs. I think that's fine. But Stephon Diggs, if you're going to trade him, you're trading him for Jamar, for Tyreek Hill, for Cooper Kupp, for Justin Jefferson. You're not trading him because you don't like the sort of productions coming out of it. This is a guy that's going to be ranked top 5 every single week because he has the potential to do so. The floor on him is very safe. He's not killing you with games. I'll at least say that. Because even in full PPR, his worst production has been 9 points against Kansas City. But other than that, he's giving you 12, 15 points every single week, which it might not be the wide receiver 1 type guy you're looking for, but at no point is he ever killing you. And I think that's the whole problem with wide receiver is that you can still have fine days for a player, and it still doesn't look great at what the wide receiver sort of crop is. So if I go and look on Fantasy Pros through my ranker, let me see what Diggs' weekly production has been. So in terms of wide receiver finishes, his is wide receiver finishes on the year, which is the problem with wide receiver as a whole. 29, 27, 36, 16, 48, 7, 23, right? So I understand in that regard when you say, should I get rid of a guy who's really been safe as a top 5 option because he hasn't been a top 5 player, and that's completely understandable. I do like the remaining schedule. I do like the talent a lot. He's still the lead option for an offense I think is very, very good. I think the one thing is you're getting a little bit more production this year out of Emmanuel Sanders and out of Cole Beasley than I ever thought so. Dawson Knox should be back as well. Let's see how that really plays into it. But I if you're going to be trading Diggs, you're trading him to get another elite type player, elite or near elite, because really there's only a few like real difference makers now in football because of how many injuries there are, but B, Cooper Kupp and Travis Kelce to me are the only real true positional advantages in fantasy. So I have Diggs second this week to Cooper Kupp. That's a step down. That's a dramatic step down, even though they're one spot away from each other. So for me, that's not particularly, what it is. Easy schedule might be a detriment to the upside of Diggs. Buffalo's gearing up for playoffs. They treat regular season. We're up now. Trey, we very smart. They are not the number one seed in the AFC. The AFC is not that great. So I'm going to at least say that there is a competition to be had. You need to get that. You need to get that bye. There's only one bye. I'm not treating. In years past, you might have been able to say that, but there's two things. If you want to say there's a detriment to scheduling, there's a detriment to how the playoffs might come up. There's two things. One, with the only one team getting a bye, there's no saying that multiple teams are going to be sitting players or doing anything in that regard. But two, you need to understand that at least in a longer season now, if you're going to start going at that mindset that players are going to start winding down towards the end of the season, then we have to think about that for all 32 teams, right? So with the additional game, this is, again, a test for the NFL. We do not understand yet what week 15 is going to look like, right? With no second bye and no, time off for players for the end of the season. With these longer seasons now, you might see more running backs rested or running back committees being kind of focused on, or you might see receivers a little bit different. I haven't seen anything really, Diggs getting banged up, but are they the number one seed in the AFC? I'd say so, but I didn't think Tennessee would be the number one seed right now, but they are. Cincinnati was number one seed last week. The NFC is a different story. The NFC is extremely competitive. The AFC is just kind of like, let's see what happens. Cause you do have like the Las Vegas Raiders were 5-2. The Chargers are good. The Ravens are good. It's a weird spot. I don't want to put in my mindset right now about players winding down and players being rested in week 9, because we still have to see what goes to week 15. We might have a problem on our hands in week 15, but we don't know that just yet. So we just got to still see. And this, I guess, part to the Diggs, I think it was a good trade to do with him because I also want to get rid of Hawkinson. If you're going to move Diggs and you move Hawkinson, go get Kelce, because that's the only tight end I would like to. The next 4 tight ends, Andrews and Pitts and Waller, and so you have Kelce at the top. Then you have Waller, Pitts, Hawkinson, and Andrews at all points. At one point in the season, all 4 of those guys have been crowned the tight end 2 rest of the season. So if you don't like Hawkinson and you want to trade to get Diggs, go get Kelce. Because that's the only guy I would like to move Hawkinson for. Because the other guys are going to be moving like slight increments, right? Because, last week everyone's like, all right, Kyle Pitts, tight end 2 rest of the season. He goes and scores 3 points against Carolina. And then Waller and Andrews come back this week. So it's, okay, let's see what happens, with these guys returning. And Hawkinson, again, is coming off a career high in receptions. Week 8 was his high in receptions for his entire career. So now we're looking at, all right, what does Hawkinson do in a Lions team? And again, they're very focused on 2 guys. They're focused on Hawkinson. They're focused on Swift, which is very good for fantasy purposes. You want big target shares. But if you're going to move Hawkinson, you're going to move Diggs, and you really want to get rid of those guys, go get Kelce. Otherwise, I'd hang out with Hawkinson or make smaller deals if you prefer Andrews or Waller or Pitts. Because if you have one of those 5 guys, I'd like to stay with those 5 tight ends. The rest of the group, not as big a fan of for me. Who wins? Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Mitchell for Saquon. Ooh, that's tough. That is a tough one. We would probably not be the Saquon guy for this week, so you'd have to at least understand that. But I think the getting of I think it's very fair because we don't know 2 things. One, we don't know what the running back situation is going to play out in Kansas City when Edwards-Helaire returns. Because in all intents and purposes, he has not been worth the first round billing that was paid for him. But 2, we do have Jeff Wilson coming back. JaMychal Hasty's back. What does the San Francisco 49ers do with Mitchell, who have really not looked to use him in the passing game? So if we have Mitchell and we have Clyde in murky running back situation, at least when Saquon comes back, whenever that is, and there's no lingering effects from this ankle issue, which was a fluke injury to begin with. If we have no problems with Saquon's going to be the best player of these three. But I think it's a fair trade in the full regard that you're understanding that you're trading murky situations for a better player, but you don't know when the better player is returning. But for at least for a week, if you need a week and win week 9, you want Mitchell. That's a top 12 running back. So go with that consideration. I don't want to say just a flat out this guy wins or that guy wins. It's different situations without knowing the teams, without knowing the records and all that. So at least in that regard, I think, again, the best player in the deal is Saquon. I've been sitting on Saquon. I'll tell you this. If someone offered for me Clyde and Mitchell in a bunch of my leagues, I need running backs in a whole lot of spots. I would take the Mitchell and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I will at least say that. He's about to be activated from the pup for Wilson. So you need to at least understand in the full regard that San Francisco has, again, if they want to go and give Mitchell all the work, cool, because we'd like to see that for fantasy. But I'd like to say with Wilson, who was baked into their plans beginning of the year, San Francisco, for me, has never been a spot that I want to trust their running back for too often. We're coming into the year with Trey Sermon. It was supposed to be Trey Sermon. It was also supposed to be what's his face, if I can't remember now, who got hurt all those months ago. But I will. San Francisco is not a spot that I ever want to trust their number one running back. Same thing over in Baltimore. Moving on, though. I don't know what game we're on. Cleveland versus Cincinnati. Cleveland, 2.5 point favorites here. 46.5 point total. OBJ, I am not ranking him because he's not considered with the team. So the one benefit of doing this show today is that I don't get to really look at OBJ as an option for this team. I moved up Landry, I have moved up DeAndre Johnson, and I have moved up the tight ends. Now, Chubb is the only real player from this side that I really, really want. But Landry's a flex. I think this team reverts to its 2020 side. I actually wrote for Dynasty Happy Hour an article last year talking about who I think, again, now Baker Mayfield's a little hurt this year, so maybe it's a little bit of a different story. But for 2021 purposes, they're more short yardage work that they implemented last year, heavy run style, limit the turnovers that Baker Mayfield can do, really worked out well for the Cleveland Browns. I like to see the team utilize the exact same style here in 2021. And we'd like to, have Hunt be the second guy instead of DeAndre Johnson. But with the tight ends and DeAndre Johnson, there's enough sort of work for Mayfield and his Cleveland Browns team to be competitive. I think Chubb is really the only spot that I super want to start from here. But Landry, for me, a flex. Hooper and Njoku, top 20 tight end plays, but not top 12, so they're not priorities. But I think again, I really want to see what it looks like from Cleveland because I think this is going to be very interesting what they do for Odell. Because if they release him, I think if he goes, to my understanding, if he goes through waivers, the contract's supposed to be picked up and no one wants to do that, right? So they're still trying to see what they can do in terms of, if they just full on let him go, it clears through waivers, someone picks him up, give him a new contract and all that stuff. All that jargon, right? Don't drop Odell. I'll say that. On Monday, I said drop Odell. And then all this news comes out. Do not drop Odell because if he goes to literally any other team, he's in a better spot than he is right now. Teams on the top of my head that he could go to, because if he wants to go to a contender, let's eliminate there's wide receiver needed teams like the Lions and maybe the Eagles. I don't think they're going to the playoffs, but the Saints, Packers, Patriots, these are all spots. Somehow he'll probably end up in Tampa Bay because nothing makes sense in that team. But if I'm looking at they need a wide receiver, those are some of the spots I would look to. New York Giants, right? That'd be funny, right? He comes back to New York. But over to the Cincinnati side, start Burrow, Mixon, Chase. Technically a bottom 5 matchup for Joe Mixon this week. Worst rushing performance on the year last week against the Jets. But heavy involvement in the red zone and made big day with his receiving work so far, right? But want to see want to see more back to what he's been doing all year, back to his low RB1 type status in a spot against Cleveland. Again, not a particularly great matchup, but they're doing a really good job of giving Mixon as much work as he can handle. Do like him here in this spot. And in reference between Higgins and Boy, I refer more to Higgins in this one. Both be top 36 for me. But Higgins, for sure, disappointed on this season. The 97 yards in week 8 was the only game over 75 yards on the year for him. Hasn't scored since week 2. And I'm also not recommending Uzama. And we did this. I'm never chasing him. We did that the twice that he had his big days. I'm not following up. Both times he had 20-point blow-up games. They were followed by stinkers. Not a start for me. I think we can move on from this one. Denver versus Dallas. Dallas -10 and 49.5 point total. Fant out doesn't change as much as I'd like to think, right? So, yeah. Listen, I think it'd be funny if he goes back to New York. I don't think that's that. Listen, that's very 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 down the totem pole. But I like chaos in the NFL. That's all it is with a lot of stuff. So I would be way for it. Would you trade away Rashad Bateman to get Odell Beckham Jr.? I would not. I would rather have Rashad Bateman right now. I'll at least say that because one, I know Rashad Bateman is playing on Sunday, and two, I would not, again, I wouldn't even drop him. I guess I'll say this. I have a lot of, I guess I'm high on Rashad Bateman, but even to expert consensus rankers, right? Think of him as a mid, wide receiver 30s and 40s, right? To at least what they're ranking him. For my purposes, I think he's in the 20s. I really like Bateman this week. I like this matchup against Minnesota. That is a bad defense, especially losing Danielle Hunter. This is now a worse sort of pass rush, and they were. If you're going to allow Cedric Wilson to have a 73-yard score, I think I would like to start Rashad Bateman against you. But I would not. I would not trade away Bateman to get Odell. Because then he might go to a spot we really like, I don't know, Green Bay. That'd be fun. But if everyone passes on him, or he just ends up in a spot we're not really loving, or he just sticks around on Cleveland and they don't utilize, there's so many odd situations that could go on with Odell. I'd like to take the sure thing right now and just stick with Bateman. And if he's like your fifth or sixth receiver, though, and you like to just get the upside of Odell where he might go, then that's fine. But I'm personally leaning Bateman. But back to Denver. Albert, I'm not even going to try and pronounce his last name. Alberto, that's all we're saying. The problem we had last week, 3 targets was anyone who received a target for Denver saw at least 3 targets, but no one saw more than 4. So Fant being out does not immediately place Alberto to be a great play, and it doesn't necessarily, I think, change as much as it would for the rest of our pass catchers. Maybe a little bit of a bump for the other guys, but I'm not really placing too much on a team that I think is really going to get dominated by Dallas. Not a big fan of how they're really just playing such a balanced offense. For their purposes, it works out pretty well. For our purposes, it sucks. Because not only with the receivers, they're doing with the running backs. They're doing a near running back 50-50 split in terms of snaps. And again, if you were someone in on Gordon like I was, it's great because you've had Melvin Gordon be a very good running back too for most of the season. If you're someone who was prioritizing Javonte Williams, you have hated this year. I still lean Gordon this week. I'm going to lead Gordon until he does not produce. I'm not going to take too much away from the 2 scores plus the fumble for Gordon to say now Williams is better or worse. They have been operating that Gordon's been better running back. I'm going to do so until things change. It also sucks that Melvin Gordon get traded. I will say that. As someone who has Melvin Gordon, I would have liked him to go to a spot where he can be featured. Then we have 2 running backs, but it is what it is. Dallas, start all your usual Dallas Cowboys. Blake Jarwin's going to be out. Does not move the meter, unfortunately, for Dalton Schultz. He's my tight end 6. I would play him over Kyle Pitts. Like him there. Gallup, possibly going to miss this game. Possibly, we don't know if he's ready or not. But Lamb is the big news that we got to talk about for a second. All these notes are from yesterday. I just got to say that. Lamb, he hurt his ankle in practice. Now, it is Thursday. Let's see how the Friday and Saturday sort of reports come out. But make sure to keep on top of that. I'm not moving my rankings just at this moment, though. Houston versus Miami. Miami fired by 6.5. 46-point over-under. How many games we got left? Okay, we just got a few games left. One is short stream, and this turned into a 45-minute one. So, on the Houston side, start just Brandon Cooks. I understand, this is the spot they might not get blown out. You saw Rex Burkhead had a lot of points that came almost all exclusive in the fourth quarter when there was mega, ultra, super duper garbage time. I would still prefer David Johnson to Philip Lindsay. If you're in a desperate spot, you can start these guys. I'm in the spot where I might have to start Philip Lindsay this week. I don't like it. Nico Collins ranked as a wide receiver 6 for me. It's just Cooks. Over at Miami, Waddle and Parker. That's right. Devontae Parker, top 30 wide receivers to me. Excellent spot for the Dolphins. Parker, definitely super underrated, I think, this week. 11 targets in his return last week against a tough Buffalo defense. 7 targets in each game he has started on the year. I think he's one of the safer floor flex type receivers on the day. And Myles Gaskin is definitely easy for one of the toughest ranks, though, because this is just a spot that should be excellent for him. But we can't tell whenever he's going to be much involved. One positive for him, 14 red zone looks over the last month compared to 1 over the first 4 weeks. That's at least showing some confidence from Miami in him. Would play Myles Gaskin over Michael Carter this week. And again, that's probably my real like gut call. But in a PPR style format, I would prefer Myles Gaskin to Michael Carter. And I guess that's gutsy. That's probably gutsy. I'm going to go with gutsy because people are really in on Michael Carter right now. I don't want to just take too much from one game. That's it. Buffalo versus Jacksonville. Buffalo favored by 14.5, 41 point over under. This game is gross. The most gross game of the week. Start nobody from the Jacksonville side unless it's James Robinson if he's healthy. Otherwise, no one. You got Jamal Agnew taking a ton of work from their receivers. Jones my favorite, much lower on Shenault. Not trusting him. On Buffalo, start all your Buffalo. You downgrade the receivers a little bit if Dawson Knox is active. If he is active, I'm going to rank Knox probably tight end. It's either tight end 9 or tight end 10. Depends how much I feel about Tyler Higbee comes Sunday before lock. But otherwise, I will lean Sanders, even though Sanders did not pull in a catch last week. And then you have Cole Beasley have 10 catches for like 130 yards because nothing makes sense. But no, I'm not going to say he's going to. No, do not mince my words. I did not say he's going to ball out. I think this is a good spot for him. And he's seeing red zone work, which is not anything he was getting his way in the first month. But I will not say he balls out. My ranking on him is RB18. I don't know if that means balling out. I just think he's in a really good spot, which he's not been in for a while. Again, his big game this year became against Tampa Bay, which is the toughest run defense in the league. So I will not say he's going to ball out. I think he's in a good spot. But I'm starting over Michael Carter, which is, I think, a gutsy call. I will just say, at least if you think that more finance points, because people really like. I think my idea is that I think Michael Carter is overranked this week. That's probably what I'm coming from. Because for rankings for average rank on the week, for half PPR, Michael Carter, I'm probably going to be the one of the lowest on him. I have him running back 19. There's only about 10 people who have him ranked lower than me. The average rank for Carter is 14. For Gaskin in half PPR, because that's what Fantasy Pros uses for their expert contest. They use half PPR. The average rank for Gaskin is running back 21. So technically, I'm not very high on Gaskin. I'm just very low on Carter. So take that as you will. Is that a cop out? Of course, it's a cop out, but that's what it is. Would I rank McNichols? Low RB2. I think we're going to talk about him on tomorrow's show. Because this is the last game I have from my notes from yesterday, which is all this was going to be. Again, this was supposed to be a short stream. We're up at 45 minutes, of course. But round running back 28 or so, I rank him ahead of Peterson for all intents and purposes. Buffalo, last note on it, best rush in the team remains Josh Allen. Moss, top 30, Singletary just outside of it. Hoping that they ever just pick one of the two and just stick with them. In the last game, before we get out of here, just real quick, New England versus Carolina. New England minus 3.5, 41 point over under. This game also kind of stinks. I'm starting just more Chuba Hubbard, Damon Harris, and Hunter Henry. But we do have to make sure and see that Christian McCaffrey is active or not. If he's active, we'll have more to talk about this game tomorrow. As of right now, I'm not expecting him to play this week. I'm not particularly ranking him. He's on my ranking sheet, but he's at the absolute bottom with Saquon Barkley. Any player I don't have enough information to definitively lock him into a spot, I just put him at the bottom. So he's right down there. Just a whole lot of meh options. I really respect the defenses in this game. I think this is a game where you can possibly see both teams, really fail to get, 3 scores or so. This is really kind of a stinky one. But with that, as I start to get all congested, first off, thanks for everyone coming in and hitting the questions. I think I got to do streams in the afternoon more often is what I got to do. But with that, if this is the first time or last time you spent your time with me, I appreciate you for that. Make sure to follow me on Twitter at Methodical1, at Gridiron Rating for the channel Twitter. Make sure to like and follow us. We're over 200, almost 220 subscribers now over on YouTube at Gridiron Ratings. Make sure to check out normally Monday, Wednesday, Friday, me at 7:30. Tuesdays and Thursdays, Getting Defensive. And on the weekend, we got Kyle with the slate. And one last question before we get out of here. Daryl Williams or Myles Gaskin? That's Daryl Williams. Daryl Williams is in my top 15. I like Myles Gaskin, but I'm not going super ultra crazy with him. If you want to just compare it to, I'm low on Carter. I'm not considering myself high on Gaskin. But with that, appreciate you guys tuning in. I will be back here tomorrow night. And with that, hopefully we have a good Thursday night football game. And Michael Carter doesn't make me look too bad.